Welcome to Fit to Speak. I'm Eugene Obah. So glad to have you with us. Fall is here, Rupert Murdoch will soon be gone from Fox, and the extension of the hot labor summer continues. As the sun sets on last night's GOP debate, we'll be taking on the ongoing debate on whether or not age, especially old age, should be a factor in holding elected or appointed office with political observer Faisal Hassan. And in a few seconds, I will make some observations about other subjects, including what could have been an unforced error from Drew Barrymore. But first, how about Colorado? I mean, yowza. The biggest story in all of sports, though the XFL and the USFL apparently may have something to say about that. I recently provided commentary on some of the early developments that were reported by Axios on our Substack page, so do go to cscmedia.substack.com right now to check it out. We'll have a link in the YouTube description below. But getting back to Colorado, the game against Colorado State over a week ago was quite the ratings bonanza, over 9 million viewers, which is impressive considering it ended past 2 a.m. here on the East Coast. In the proverbial church of Colorado football, led by its proverbial minister, head coach, Deion Sanders, I believe, and if I were a fly on the wall of just about every athletic director's office and every university president's office, I bet you the farm that they're trying to figure out how to replicate Colorado's success thus far. I mean, the energy that Colorado's enjoying, I mean, that and the confidence, not to mention the money that's being raked in, is truly a sight to behold. As I've told the athletic department at my alma mater many years ago, which has been steadily climbing up the national rankings, when you win, you've got friends. And really, if Colorado continues to do what they are doing, then the Brinks truck is going to back up for Coach Prime. It's going to be a very, very, very interesting offseason, to say the least. But one person who probably should not be alienating her friends and has had an interesting offseason for the wrong reasons is Drew Barrymore, who initially made the ill-advised decision to return her daytime talk show to the airwaves, this amid the ongoing writer's strike. Now, there was a lot of confusion when the news broke about Drew, but to be clear, yes, talk shows are under a different contract under the Screen Actors Guild called the Network Code. That contract was ratified in 2022 and is not subject to the current strike. But, and there's a big one, the shows that actually employ Writers Guild of America writers, including The View, and Drew has got 2 of them, are crossing the line. In fact, Sherry Shepherd, who hosts a daytime show, recently, in fact, in her season premiere over a week ago, eloquently explained this point when she explained why her show can return to the airwaves.
Talk shows in general fall under a different union contract code. So we are allowed to come back unless you are a WGA show. Now, the Sherry Show is not a WGA show. We have never employed WGA writers, so us coming back to work is not crossing the picket line. And as a comic, my comedic take on the headlines is my voice. I write my jokes. I'm the writer, and I'm not in the WGA. I have the producers who help me shape my words, which is why we don't have WGA writers over here at Sherry.
Now, Drew, to her credit and or perhaps public pressure, reversed her decision and stopped taping new shows, but not before this video she posted on Instagram, which has since been deleted, in which, after initially apologizing to writers, she kind of pours gasoline on the fire as to her initial decision.
As I said, this is bigger than me, and there are other people's jobs on the line. And since launching live in a pandemic, I just wanted to make a show that was there for people in sensitive times. And I weighed the scales and I thought, if we could go on during a global pandemic and everything that the world has experienced through 2020, why would this sideline us? So I want to just put one foot in front of the other and make a show that's there for people, regardless of anything else that's happening in the world.
What's interesting, but not all that surprising to me, is that after Drew made her initial decision, Bill Maher, host of HBO's Real Time, followed Drew into crossing the picket line before reversing his position. It should also be noted that Jennifer Hudson, host of her eponymous daytime program, and The Talk, the latter of which is produced by CBS, have also reversed their decisions to debut new seasons. Some people ask why Drew got the brunt of the criticism relative to some of the other shows. And I think it's pretty simple, really. When you trade your public image, your persona, your actions on kindness and positivity and all that comes with that, the expectations of you and your behavior, especially when it comes to this kind of situation, and given Drew's background and everything that she has done in the industry, the expectations of you are that much higher. It is also the very similar reason why Ellen DeGeneres' daytime show ended. And in furtherance of what I just said, insofar as expectations, I applauded Drew for backing out of hosting the VMAs earlier this year, which made it all the more shocking that she would have crossed the line. A line that was crossed for the organizers of the National Book Awards, who rescinded her invitation to host the awards in November, stating that the ceremony is, in addition to celebrating literature, it celebrates the, their words, incomparable contributions of writers to our culture. They are right about that. And they were also 100% right to rescind her invitation. Now, I'm glad ultimately that she reversed her decision, that she is not doing the show until such a time that this stuff is solved. But the fact that she even made this decision in the first place is very alarming to me. It really, really is. And it is so alarming because any of you who have watched this program for any length of time knows that I have consistently praised Drew and her talk show as a breath of fresh air in the genre. And the ratings have showed incredible momentum from year one to now. But what she did initially threatened to derail that momentum. Had she gone on the path, had she continued to go on the path that she was about to go, any goodwill that she would have brought leading to the new season, whenever it comes out, would have been completely and utterly derailed. Completely and utterly derailed. And again, ultimately, I'm glad that she has reversed her decision, but it should not have been even a thought in the first place. It should not have. And, she talked about, oh, the jobs of all of the other staff and things of that nature in her early statements. If she really cared about the jobs long term for her staff that are not, that do not have union contracts and or things of that nature, then she would not have made the decision in the first place. So, Drew, again, it's just frustrating for me. Drew, in ending her shows, every time she ends her show, she always says, "We make this show for you, so take it with you." So, Drew, if you ever come across this program, I want you to take with you this question: why be less when you can be more? And Joining me now is Faisal Hassan. He's a program manager at an international nonprofit, and he's also a political observer. So, Faisal, welcome to the show. It is great to have you on. And let's go ahead and get started, okay?
All right. Thanks, Eugene.
Yeah,
Great to be here.
absolutely. It's great to have you here on the program. I've been definitely wanting to talk to you about your observations, especially as it pertains to this impending election. I mean, we're going to be, think about it, by the time this show airs, it will be about 14 months until the public here in the US decides as to whether or not US President Joe Biden is going to get a second term. But the elephant in the room is not so much who the GOP are going to nominate, but it's really the president's age. And there are some of these polls that seem to bear this out. There's one from AP, NORC, and a few others. And the most eye-popping number from that particular poll is the fact that Republicans and Democrats just about equally believe that the president is too old to make a second term. But in recent months, we've seen that Senators Dianne Feinstein and Mitch McConnell have apparent cognitive issues, apparent health issues, I guess, for the world to see. And earlier this month, Nancy Pelosi announced that she's running for re-election of her seat in the House of Representatives. But then on the other side, you've got Mitt Romney, who just recently announced that he is going to, retire. That basically age, it's time to get out the way, that sort of thing. That it's time for a younger generation to come through and cite their vision for the country. I think it's fair to say, Faisal, that the whole conversation about age has hit crescendo as we start to get closer and closer to this election. So, is age a fair game for the public to consider? And, given these developments, should the U.S. have upper age limits? There are some polls that say yes, the public believes that yes, that should be the case. But what do you think about those things?
Yeah, in terms of the age limits for political office, it's interesting because, I don't think in American history we've kind of had this issue because we live in an era where people are, fortunately living longer and healthier lives, which is a good thing. But there are other countries where they do have limits on political office for age. I'm not sure one way or the other because I see both sides of the argument. I see both sides in terms of yes, we should have age limits because we should have newer generation of leadership. I am sympathetic to that because I think at a certain point, being in Congress or the Senate or whatnot for 30, 40 years, I mean, that's longer than both of us have been alive, Eugene. Like that is kind of crazy. On the other hand, there are older politicians who are still sharp as a rock and who are still effective.
I think Bernie Sanders is an example of that.
Yeah, Bernie is very sharp and he's probably got a lot of energy, more than people half his age. It is so it is kind of a interesting conundrum because if somebody's able to serve, I don't think they should be forbidden from serving. But I see both sides of the argument. I am sympathetic to the argument that there probably should be some kind of limit. I don't know what the actual number would be, but I think it also has an issue to do with the power of incumbency as well, because in our system, once you're in, you're especially in the House, you are not going to lose if the district is a certain way. So and that goes into money in politics, that goes into redistricting, that goes into, I mean, then you go down, gerrymandering, you go down a rabbit hole, and it's kind of like, okay, then you got to look at the whole system. And unfortunately, I don't think we're not at that point where the whole system is being looked at. So I think that's why age is kind of where I think a lot of people are looking at, and they're like, okay, well, this could be something that most people agree on in terms of age limits / term limits for especially like federal office.
I mean, should there be term limits? Should there be term limits, especially when we've
I
talked about the Supreme Court? Because
yeah,
to your point that you made earlier on,
yeah.
people are living longer, which is a very good thing. I hope that when I'm 80, knock on wood, I hope that I still got my faculties and things of that nature. Hopefully they still look good as well. Okay,
Yeah.
let's be real about that. But in all seriousness, though, um, to your point, um, really people are living longer, and when the Supreme Court was envisioned, the life expectancy back in the day, like if you were in your mid 30s, at all, well, you might as well start picking your plots, at the cemetery at that point. So what about term limits, especially for like Supreme Court and things of that nature? Are you in favor of that? There are some polls that that again bear this stuff out, but what do you think?
Yeah, for the courts is a little different because, yeah, especially the federal courts, once you're there for life. So I think there should be term limits for the federal court system, including the Supreme Court. I know I think there's some legislation that in Congress was introduced about 18-year term limits. There could be, you could do something like that. Same thing with the federal courts. I think not only should there be, I think there should be a term limit for the federal courts, but I also think there's also the opinion that the federal courts also haven't been expanded since the late 70s, since Jimmy Carter was president. So there's also an argument to expand the federal court system as well to deal with all of the case load that we have coming in. But yeah, I support that, especially for the Supreme Court, because I think we've got. Obviously the Supreme Court's a little younger now because Trump's appointments are all in their 50s. And then also Joe Biden's appointment of Ketanji Brown Jackson, she's also in her early 50s. So the court has gotten younger in the last like 5 years. But yeah, I think there should be that, and that would probably be a little more healthier politically, maybe, but I'm not sure. Maybe not, because it is already political. Maybe it makes it more political, but I think having people who were born in the 40s still hovering over the court, and while they're 80 years old, I don't think that it makes sense. I just don't think it makes sense, especially with how things have evolved technology-wise, how the country's changed, and all that.
I mean, there were arguments I remember before um, you know Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed,
Yeah.
that she should have retired from the courts.
Yes.
And I think that makes the argument, I think, insofar as term limits, even thinking about the 18-year stuff makes it even more interesting to me. So that's something that we have to see if there's any willpower on the part of our leadership here in the U.S. To really look at that, a little bit. I think this has got some interesting implications here. One of the other things that I found interesting as well is that I was reading National Review, and Dan McLaughlin wrote language of what, according to him, an amendment to the Constitution would look like. There are 4 sections in this, but I'll read the first one, which says, quote, "No person shall be eligible for election to any federal office who shall have attained to the following age on the date the person would take office: president or vice president, 75 years; for senator, 80 years; for representative, 85 years. But then the National Review's executive editor, Mark Antonio Wright, wrote a piece and made a slight adjustment so that it reads, quote, "No person shall be eligible for election to or succession to," emphasis mine, "or succession to any federal office." Now it goes on, and Wright points out that if the U.S. is on the 3rd or 4th successor, so in this case, Speaker of the House or the President pro tempore, then they should be in the prime of their life. What about the point of successors, Faisal? Is he right? Is he right that we should have those who are next in line um, be in their relative youth? I know you were on the fence about age limits earlier on, but what about that point of successors?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting proposal. I think, in terms of the line of succession, um, it's certainly a good argument in terms of, yeah, you shouldn't have like 85-year-olds who are in the line of succession. But but to getting a constitutional amendment through on that, I just don't see how that is possible, especially when you have, because right now the Republican Party, their leadership is younger on average, right? Minus who their GOP frontrunner is right now, who's also pushing 80. But the Democrats just recently, just this Congress, changed their leadership team in the House. And then in the Senate, the leader of the Senate, Senator Schumer, I think
Mhm.
he's in his early 70s right now. So in some ways, I think that issue has kind of in this Congress has kind of corrected itself, because if you look, our president is 80, but the vice president is in her mid to late 50s. Or the Speaker of the House is in his mid to late 50s.
McCarthy, yeah.
Yeah, the president pro tem of the Senate, I believe, is Senator Murray, I think, and I think she's around 70. But so yeah, so this Congress is a lot better than the last Congress. So in some ways, it's kind of a little bit corrected itself. So I'm not sure it's a needed amendment, but I think it's an interesting proposal. But I think kind of naturally, if both parties, um, obviously see it as an issue, I think both parties are gonna kind of address it in some ways or some fashion.
I think to your point, especially in so far as that, I was looking at some stuff here that, the median age of the House is 58 years of age.
Hmm.
The Senate is 65.
Hmm.
But then you have the median age of the United States population as a
Hmm.
whole was 39 years of age. And it kind of leads to this.
Yeah.
You know, is what we have now, in terms of, the boomers, and things of that nature, especially the older one, on the older end of that scale, is this really representative of what um, we need to have, for lack of a better term, in this country? What if, for argument's sake, right? What if, you know, you had what would the dynamic be if we had more millennials, if we had Gen Z? Because Gen Z is a very important voting bloc. I mean, they were 27% of the midterm elections, according to Tufts University. There were more in the battleground states, but on the average, it's 27%. Um, what would the implications be if we had those generations be in office, and would that motivate more folks, especially the younger generation, those of us and younger, to come out and vote? In this stuff.
Yeah, I think in our generation, obviously we're millennials. We're kind of in the middle. You and I are kind of in the middle of the millennial generation.
Yeah.
And then Gen Z is like right behind us. Yeah, I think if there was more representation of these two generations, um, like there probably would be a little bit more enthusiasm. But, the research also says young voters historically just do not vote. And we've seen that time and time again. We mentioned Bernie Sanders, he kind of saw that, especially in 2020,
Hmm.
kind of the hard way. Though in the general election, Joe Biden was able to corral, enough to win in obviously the battleground states.
Hmm.
You think about, Milwaukee and Madison and those places like that. Um, so, but yeah, to your point, to your question, I think there would be an uptick. I think if we did have more people in our generation being representative, I think we would have more. I think we would have more policy focuses that are relevant to our daily lives.
Things like
Uh,
climate change, I would say,
climate
for
change,
example.
climate change, I think you wouldn't have as much hostility, even from folks on the right who are our generation. I don't think you would have as much hostility on things like the student debt crisis or things like that. Climate change, of course, even young Republican voters think climate change is an issue.
Yeah, and
So,
that was even cited. Sorry to interrupt, but that was even cited. That was even a question in the first debate
mhm.
last month. So
Right.
that was a watershed moment, I thought.
Right, right. Yeah, that was very surprising. You also have other things like, housing, a huge problem with our generation, and the Gen Z.
Mhm.
You have, the, the right, likes to talk about pro-family policies, but, where are those policies when you guys govern, right? The Democrats also talk about that a little bit. But you had Democrats who let the child tax credit expire when they had power. So things like that, I feel like there'd be a little bit more cohesion on the policy focus. But obviously, Congress, as you know, there's so many special interests. There's so many, you know, you know, the DC lobbyists all over the place are so
K Street.
powerful. K Street is so powerful, then Wall Street, of course. So it's like, so you have so many different interests, but I think on a macro level, you probably wouldn't have as much hostility to some of those issues as you do with the boomer generation that is still there. Even the Gen Xers too, and in some respect, there
Right,
it shows
because
some very big hostility to the struggles that the younger generation is going through.
that's right. Because let's be honest, a lot of the folks that are in that towards that end of when we think about, say, the 80-year-olds, the 90-year-olds,
Yeah,
that are still out there. I hate to be crass about it, but they're probably thinking that, well, you know, you know, death is kind of knocking on the door, so
right.
I'm not going to be around to see the ramifications of this vote and that sort of thing, which is why I think that there has been a lot of inertia. Maybe not the only reason, but well, probably part of it is why there has been a lot of inertia, I
hmm
think, right?
hmm No, I definitely agree with that. It's kind of funny because Mitt Romney's announcement this week that he's not running for re-election was kind of the opposite. He's like, well, I'm going to leave because my after my next term I'll be in my 80s, and you know, I will. We need to have people who are going to live in this country and see what happens out of the policies we create be in that position. So he's implying he's like I'm getting to the 18th hole. I'm not going to see what's going to be happening, the ramifications of this next, term, 10, 20 years after that term. So yeah, so I think there's very little introspection on the part of, the folks who've been in Congress and who've been in leadership for so long. You mentioned Nancy Pelosi earlier. She's 83. I think she's relatively still sharp, but at the end of the day, it's like, um, I think her daughter is like next in line for that seat. I mean, her daughter can easily get it, or whoever. But some people say, well, she should still be in there because she's a great fundraiser, and I'm like, she can fundraise outside of Congress. I mean,
This
you
is
know.
true. That is
So
very, very true.
yeah,
I mean,
but I guess the perks of Congress is, you have a staff that waits on you, that does everything you need, get free flights, you get, you get all these special invitations, all these great dinners, all these great, all these things that you get to do in DC and abroad as well. You get on international trips too.
yeah.
Um,
So I
you
guess it's
know,
hard to let that go.
it's hard to let that go, I think, and the taxpayers, are funding that,
I
so
mean,
it's
we're paying for it. I
we're paying
mean,
for it, so it's that's tough to give up, especially when you've been there for, I think for her, she's been there 37 years.
mhm.
That's tough to give up.
So that is, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
hey, if I
yeah,
had free flights and staff and that sort of thing, then hey, I mean,
It's kind of
I'd be there until
it's funny. It's like, they call a lot of, a lot of people call, Congress, nursing home or retirement homes. And,
basically, yeah,
you know,
exactly. And I mean, this is probably one of the best,
that's,
so maybe that's why we're
yeah.
seeing a lot of these folks still stick around and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Um, I guess finally, in our remaining time that we've got, Faisal, that in the light of what's been happening recently, and especially when you think about what's happened with Senator McConnell, Senator Feinstein, and that's and things of that nature. Um, in thinking about that, does that help or hurt President Biden's case insofar as getting reelected? Because again, even before this entire conversation about age really
Mhm.
hit that crescendo, as I mentioned earlier, it's like you would always hear, especially from Republicans, that the whole Sleepy Joe, blah 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 blah, that from Trump, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Not to say that Trump is not exactly a fountain of youth either, but anyway, nonetheless, it's always been the kind of sort of the main, not maybe not the main argument, but one of the arguments against Biden's candidacy for Republicans. But now seeing what's happening with Senator McConnell here, two times that he froze, um, d- does this, help or hurt the case here, for the president?
I think it hurts. It definitely is hurting him, and I think you see that in the polls, because uh, Trump is probably going to be the GOP nominee, whether he gets convicted on anything between now and May or not, or whether he whether he continues to fight all these cases on 4 different fronts.
19-1 criminal charges,
Yeah,
4 indictments.
yeah. But I think he's going to sail to the nomination. He'll easily get enough delegates at the convention. Um, and so I don't, and the Republicans can't stop it because that base will always stay with the former president, right?
Mhm.
Um, so
But what about? I'm sorry, Faisal.
yeah,
What about like say like right now, you've got Ramaswamy,
yeah,
Vivek Ramaswamy
yeah.
rising in the polls. You don't see him, taking this stuff. You don't see him, or even like Nikki Haley. Uh,
I I don't see Nikki Haley. I don't see Mike Pence. Ramaswamy, I think he's probably he's playing the Trump role. Obviously, sans Trump in the primary, so in those debates. So I'm sure the debate next week, that happens, he'll further
right,
be in that role. Um, and he's obviously, we talked about young people. Obviously, he's the youngest guy running for president. And that's a whole nother topic about him, and
right.
he
But
is,
but
but
you say that this does hurt, like to your
I,
point, right?
yeah, I think it hurts. Yeah, it definitely hurts Biden. Um, because like I said, in the polls, it's like him and Trump are like tied. It's like literally a jump ball of who's gonna have the higher popular vote right now. Obviously, we're in
Mhm.
September. That could change.
Right,
Um, and I think, and I'm more on the left, so I feel more partial to President Biden's accomplishments, and I think he's done a lot of good things. At the same time, the White House, and the Biden campaign, they have a big task ahead of them to make their case that they've done these things, that they're going to help the country, and that the president is still up for the job. And that's going to be tough because obviously the president is not the same guy as he was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Everybody sees it, everybody knows it. It's not a secret. So I think their case has to be like, this guy can still. I mean, he's the president right now. He's doing the job, right? So he
hmm
can still do the job. And the Republican attacks have kind of stuck now. And I was skeptical that they would stick. They didn't really stick in 2020 because 2020 we were dealing with the pandemic. There's so much going on around the country. Now that we're kind of quote unquote post pandemic, even though COVID's still around, and all the emergency stuff has kind of ended,
Mhm.
that there's more scrutiny and focus on the president as an incumbent. But he's also an incumbent, and incumbents are hard to beat. In 2020, we saw it was tough to beat Trump. He didn't lose. I mean, he lost the popular vote by a lot, like he did in 2016. But 40,000 votes here, in 3 states, and he's still in the White House today. So it's going to be tough to beat Biden. I think the Democrats can't really afford at this late part of the game to replace him with Kamala Harris or whoever comes off the street. At this point, it doesn't make any sense. So I think the White House and the president are going to have to really come up with some kind of innovative way that he can make his case. Because right now, you see in the polls, a lot of the the weakness in the polls is from core Democrat constituencies. African Americans, low on him. Latinos, kind of low on him. Young voters, we talk about Gen Z, millennials, they are low on him. So their job, and then obviously, but the interesting thing is, in all the polling I've seen, he's doing better with white voters. He's doing better with kind of the suburban voter. So they kind of are aware of what he's done, I think. So their challenge is the core Democrat constituencies. Can they shore that up? If they can shore that up, I think he can definitely win re-election, even at his advanced age. And my last point is, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, who he's running against. Trump is very. I think people should not underestimate him. He's very formidable. I think he definitely helps the GOP down ballot. I think we saw that in 2020 because the Democrats were supposed to win seats in the House. They lost seats in the House. I think Trump definitely helps them down ballot. But at the end of the day, if this guy gets convicted, or if he's obviously going through televised trials on TV every day while he's running, I think that's going to hurt him with independent voters. I think because I think a lot of people still trust the justice system to some extent, and even if they're a little more partial to Trump, it's going to be like, how can he govern from prison if he got convicted? Um,
Yeah, that's
so
gonna be a tough
so it's
one.
so it's kind of tough. Yeah, it's kind of tough. So I think, and then I think there's probably a segment of voters who kind of will probably vote Biden default because of who he might be up against.
Mhm.
Especially in swing states. I think the swing states is kind of, it's going to, obviously, as you know, this election is going to be decided in like 6 states. So,
Basically, and
yeah, yeah.
to me, it's kind of a pity with the way our elections are currently set up. Left to me, we would have the more states sign on the National Popular Vote Compact in the absence of a constitutional amendment. Which, if a constitutional amendment were a thing in this Congress, that would be the case. But of course, with the way that our stuff is set up now and the people that are in there, most of them anyway, that's not going to be the case. An amendment.
And there's also there's one other wrinkle. I don't know how quick this would happen or how many states are going to be part of it, but there's also the whole 14th Amendment stuff that there are lawsuits around the country that are trying to get Trump off the ballot. So if he
Mhm.
were to run, he'd have to be a write-in candidate at that point. So if he's off the ballot in states like Michigan and states like, other states like that, Virginia, then he doesn't have a path to 270 at that
No.
point. And then Biden would probably have the most electoral college votes, and he can probably get to 270 easier. Um, so that's another thing that might happen that I think people are picking up on it now, but if it actually happens, be huge storyline next year.
Seismic,
Yeah,
seismic.
yeah.
Well, Faisal, I definitely hope that we will continue to have you on to talk about this and so many stuff. 14 months away, this election, I think the messaging is going to be key. And again, as I said, I hope that we will continue to have your insights on this. So, Faisal Hassan, program manager at an international nonprofit and a political observer. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Eugene. Great to talk to you.
Folks, we continue to need your help in finding broadcast industry professional and University of Maryland alum Terrence Woods, who's been missing since October of 2018. If you have any information as to Terrence's whereabouts, you're asked to call the Idaho County Sheriff's Office at 208-983-1100. That's 208-983-1100. You can also reach out to us on our social media accounts, which you'll see at the end of the program, and we'll pass any information along to them. And thank you so much for watching. Listen, there's going to be a lot more where that came from, so you better stay tuned to catch it all. In the meantime, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media accounts for more information, including all of the bonus content that you'll see for today's show. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on our YouTube channel so that you do not miss any of our episodes. And please join us on Substack and Patreon and support all of the work that we do here. Until next time, I'm Eugene Obah, but remember, we will not be silenced.